girls. So we are going to look at the steps to sketch linear graphs. I'm going to read them very quickly, but then I'm going to start doing example 1. So in this video, you will only find example 1, and in the following videos, you will find the other examples. So it says, identify if it's one of the special cases, either horizontal or vertical. If it is, sketch accordingly. Then the second step that you have to check is to rearrange the equation algebraically to look like this. Sometimes you will get the equation right away like that, so you don't have to do anything. Then identify the gradient, determine the trajectory of the line, if it's positive or negative, and therefore if it's going to go upwards or downwards, okay? Identify the Y-intercept, then you have to plot the Y-intercept in the Cartesian plane, and then you have to use your gradient to find the second point using your rise over run. Then sketch the graph with a ruler and label the points you use to sketch the graph. Okay, let's do example 1. So I have, and this is what I suggest with you two girls. When you're doing your exercises and practicing, have your steps and check. Remember that it's about methodological. So you have to be step by step. So I have this equation, it says sketch the following graph, and I have this one. What is my first step? Identify if it's one of the special cases. Is one of the special cases? No. So I'm just going to, that one, no, doesn't go. Rearrange the equation algebraically to look as y equals mx plus c. Does it look like that? Some of you might say, not exactly, because we usually have the x first. So if you want to rearrange it, you can. You don't need to, because it's already, what the difference is that it has the constant first. But I'm going to rearrange it just to make it very clear. So I have y is equal to negative 7x divided by 2, take away 3. When you're doing this, be very careful with your signs, because that's going to be crucial, okay? So have I done this one? Done. Identify the gradient. What is my gradient? So my gradient is the coefficient of x, the number that is multiplying the x. You start to become more technical with your language. So coefficient means the number that is multiplying the pronumeral. So I have negative 7 halves. Okay, done. Determine the trajectory. Is it positive or negative? Okay, so it's negative, which means that it's going to go downwards. Done. Identify the Y-intercept. So I have my Y-intercept. What is my Y-intercept in this case? Negative 3. Okay, don't forget about the negative 3. If I'm going to write it as coordinates, if they ask me to write it as coordinates, how will I write it? 0, negative 3. Wonderful. Plot the Y-intercept in the Cartesian plane. So we're going to do that. So I have my Cartesian plane, and it's 0, negative 3. So I'm going to use each one of these grid lines as a unit, okay? So we are going to do it, when you're doing yours in your test, remember to always label your axis. Super important to always do that. Okay, so 0, negative 3, I'm going to do it with blue. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. And here it is, my first point, and I have it. Then done. Use your gradient to find the second point. So what is my gradient? My gradient is negative 7 over 2. I already know that it's going to be negative, agree? So I already know that it's going to look like this, agree? Because I know that it's going to look like this, I can choose to do this point or a point down here. Either way, it goes the same way, as long as I know that it's going to be in this direction. That's why it's so important that you already know the trajectory of yours. So the rise is 7. Negative 7 actually is going downwards. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then across 2. 1, 2. I have my second point. Got it? And with that, we're going to trace our line. So I'm going to try to do it here. This doesn't work always, but I'm going to try to do it too. Okay, kind of. You do it, you go across it, and you extend your graph. To do it as exact as I can. Okay, what else does it say that I have to do? Use your gradient to find your second point. That's what I did here. I used my gradient going down 7 and across 2. So I've done that thing. I have sketched the graph with a ruler, and now we have to label the points that we used to sketch. So we always label our y-intercept. So the point that I use here was -3. Oh, sorry. Oops. 0, -3. There we go. That's the same thing that I had before here. 0, -3. And what about this one? So you can count, or I also know that how many did I went across? I went across 2. Agree? And I was in -3, and I went downwards another 7. That means that this point is 2. Wonderful. And with that, you have finished doing your sketch of the graph. We often ask you to also label your y-intercept, your x-intercept. So if you have intercepts of the axis, you actually have to label them. I'm not going to do it in this video because that's going to create a little bit of algebra that we're going to use, but in the last video that I'm going to explain how to use your CAS, I'm going to explain how we can do that. I just want to do one last thing with this video. What if you were doing here and you decided to go with, I'm going to do it with green, even though it's going to lie in the same line. So I don't know if it's going to work perfectly because, as I said, these lines doesn't work perfectly, but if you do it by hand with your ruler, it should work perfectly. So instead, if I wanted to go down, if I decided to go up, could I do it to find the gradient? So I'm in this point, and with my gradient, can I find this point, whatever it is that is going to lie? Of course you can. Why? Because you already know the trajectory that is going to be downwards. So let's look how you will do that. So in this case, you will go upwards 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this time across to the negatives 1 and 2, and it almost worked. We can see that my line is not perfectly aligned, so I can work it out. If I decide to use this point, we have to label the point. What are the coordinates of this point? So we can count, or I can say, I know that I went across to the -2 and up another 7, which means that this one has to be 4. And that's my line. I'm just going to fix my line so that it actually works and goes through the point that I needed it to go. Perfect. Kind of. Okay, there you go, girls. So that's example 1. Wonderful.